The warehouse district had been flagged 3 times in 6 months. Anonymous tips, unusual traffic patterns, vehicles arriving at odd hours with no cargo documentation. Local residents reported seeing delivery trucks pull in after midnight and leave before dawn, their cargo bays somehow heavier on departure than arrival. Noise complaints from adjacent properties described mechanical sounds at unusual hours, hydraulic lifts operating when the facility should have been closed, ventilation systems running at full capacity during supposed downtime. But it wasn't until a contract truck driver reported hearing sounds from inside a sealed container that the pieces finally connected. He had been waiting for paperwork clearance, parked near a container marked for agricultural equipment export. Through the steel walls, he heard what he initially thought was machinery malfunction. Then he realized the sounds had rhythm, pattern, desperation. Someone was inside, striking metal, trying to make noise, trying to be heard. His report triggered an immediate response. The facility was placed under 24-hour surveillance. Undercover investigators posed as delivery personnel, observing loading procedures and security protocols. Financial forensics teams began tracing the company's transactions, looking for discrepancies between reported income and actual shipment volumes. Immigration authorities cross-referenced the facility's employment records with visa documentation and work permits. The pattern that emerged was disturbing. The logistics company processed legitimate freight, maintaining the appearance of normal operations. But embedded within that legitimate activity was a parallel system. Certain containers were marked with non-standard codes. Specific trucks operated on routes that didn't match their manifests. Wire transfers arrived from overseas accounts with no corresponding shipment documentation. The company's annual revenue exceeded what their declared cargo volumes could generate by a factor of 3. The tactical briefing took place in a secure conference room 20 miles from the target location. 3 SWAT teams assembled. The commander laid out the intelligence with precision. A logistics company operating near the interstate junction. Legitimate import-export paperwork. Clean business license. The owner had no criminal record. He had operated the facility for 8 years without incident, maintaining professional relationships with customs brokers, transportation companies, and commercial clients. On paper, it looked like a standard freight operation serving regional distributors. The facility employed 12 people. Day shift workers handled legitimate cargo. Night shift operations were different. Smaller crews, limited documentation, restricted access to certain areas. The owner was rarely on site but maintained complete control through surveillance systems and trusted managers. The property had been purchased through a shell corporation registered in a jurisdiction with minimal disclosure requirements. Background checks on the owner revealed multiple businesses, all legitimate on the surface, all structured to obscure ultimate ownership and financial flows. But the intelligence told a different story. Surveillance teams had documented unusual activity over the past 4 months. Vehicles arriving outside documented business hours, people being moved from trucks into the facility who never emerged through normal exits. Security measures that exceeded standard commercial requirements, biometric access systems, reinforced exterior doors with industrial-grade locks, surveillance cameras covering every concealed approach and blind spot. The property's electrical consumption was 40% higher than comparable warehouses of similar size and activity level. That excess power was going somewhere, powering something that didn't appear in the facility's visible operations. Thermal imaging from aerial surveillance showed heat signatures in sections of the building that shouldn't generate significant thermal output. The building's blueprints, filed with the city during construction permits, showed a standard warehouse design. But electromagnetic mapping suggested additional structures. Space beneath the main floor that didn't correspond to foundation requirements or utility infrastructure. The discrepancy was subtle but measurable. Something was down there. The warrant was executed at dawn. 3 SWAT teams. 42 tactical operators. Perimeter secured in under 90 seconds. Surveillance identified 3 people inside the facility at the time of entry. the night manager, and 2 warehouse workers. No civilians in the immediate vicinity. Adjacent businesses weren't yet operational. Traffic on the access road was minimal. The main entrance was a reinforced loading dock with surveillance cameras covering every approach. The team moved fast, using a battering ram to breach the exterior door while a second unit secured the rear access point. A third team positioned at the facility's eastern wall, ready to respond to any attempt at escape through emergency exits or hidden passages. Inside, the warehouse looked exactly as expected. Rows of shipping containers stacked too high, forklifts parked in designated bays, pallets loaded with legitimate freight, automotive parts, industrial components, consumer electronics awaiting redistribution. A small office area with computers and filing cabinets, time cards, safety posters, everything a functioning logistics operation should have. The night manager was detained within 30 seconds of entry. He offered no resistance, hands raised immediately, claiming he was just doing his job. The 2 warehouse workers were found in the break room. Both were detained, separated, and held for questioning. Neither showed signs of being armed. Neither attempted to flee or destroy evidence. The first sweep turned up standard logistics equipment: shipping manifests, invoices, client contracts, employee schedules, tax documents, insurance policies. Everything appeared legitimate. Everything matched the company's public operations. Nothing that screamed criminal enterprise. Nothing that justified the level of tactical response. But the tactical commander wasn't satisfied. He had seen the thermal imaging. He had reviewed the electrical consumption data. The floor plan didn't match the building's exterior dimensions. There was space unaccounted for. Nearly 40 feet of structure that didn't appear in the interior layout. The warehouse measured 300 feet in length according to external measurements. But the interior space, from the front wall to the rear storage area, measured only 260 feet. 40 feet was missing. 40 feet of building that existed structurally but wasn't part of the visible warehouse. The team began systematic searches, tapping walls, checking for hollow sections or concealed access points, using handheld thermal scanners to detect temperature differentials that might indicate hidden passages or ventilation systems serving concealed spaces, reviewing the facility's electrical panels, looking for circuits that powered areas not visible in the main warehouse. It was the K9 unit that found it. The dog alerted near a utility panel in the warehouse's northwest corner. The panel looked standard: electrical breakers, conduit connections, safety labeling. But when the tactical team examined it closely, the mounting bolts showed recent wear. The panel wasn't just covering electrical systems. Behind the panel, concealed by a false wall constructed to match the surrounding cement, was a reinforced steel door with a biometric scanner. No signage. No warning labels. No indication of what lay beyond. Just a door that shouldn't exist, secured with technology far beyond what the entry team used a hydraulic spreader. The door resisted initially. Reinforced frame, deadbolts engaging from multiple points, but the pressure was relentless. The door gave way with a metallic groan that echoed through the warehouse. Behind it, a concrete stairwell descended into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on automatically, triggered by the breach. The stairs went down, 20 feet, then 30, then more. Deeper than any legitimate basement should extend. Deeper than utility access or storage would require. At the bottom was a corridor, 40 feet long. Industrial lighting every 10 feet. Cement walls with moisture stains indicating poor ventilation. And doors, 6 of them, each with external bolt locks and small observation slots. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of disinfectant and something else: unwashed bodies, fear, desperation. The residue of human suffering concentrated in confined spaces. The tactical team advanced with weapons ready. Unknown threat environment. Potential for armed resistance. but the corridor was empty. No guards, no surveillance cameras. The operation relied on secrecy and concealment rather than active defense. The door upstairs was the security measure. Once past it, the system assumed control. The first door was opened by hand. No need for breaching tools. Just slide the bolt and pull. Inside was a room no larger than a storage closet. 8 feet by 10 feet. Concrete walls. A single bare bulb providing dim illumination. A cot with a thin mattress. A bucket serving as sanitation. And 2 people, a young woman and a teenage girl, both malnourished, both terrified. They shielded their eyes from the tactical flashlights, pressed themselves against the far wall as if expecting punishment rather than rescue. Neither spoke immediately. They had learned that silence was safer than questions. The woman was approximately 25 years old, though malnutrition and stress made accurate assessment difficult. She had marks on her wrists where restraints had been applied at some point during her captivity. The girl appeared to be 15 or 16, visibly frightened, gripping the woman's arm as the tactical officers entered. Both were wearing donated clothing, mismatched, oversized garments that suggested their original possessions had been confiscated. When finally addressed in Spanish by a bilingual officer, the woman managed a single question. "Are we going to die now?" The response was immediate and clear. "You're safe. We're police. We're here to help you. You're not in trouble. No one is going to hurt you." It took several minutes of gentle reassurance before either of them moved voluntarily. They were given water, which they drank desperately, and blankets, which they wrapped around themselves despite the ambient temperature being perfectly comfortable. Their bodies had been under stress so long that even basic warmth felt like luxury. The second door revealed 3 more, all women, ages ranging from late teens to mid-30s. They spoke broken English, some no English at all. One woman was from Honduras and had been promised agricultural work with legal documentation. Another was from Thailand, recruited for what she believed was a restaurant position. The third was from Moldova, told she would be working in hospitality management. All had paid fees, provided documents, and trusted recruiters who seemed legitimate. All had discovered the truth only after crossing multiple borders and finding themselves locked in underground rooms with no communication to the outside world. They had been there for varying lengths of time. One had arrived 6 days earlier. Another had been confined for 3 months. They didn't know where they were geographically. They had no access to windows, no way to determine day from night except for the timing of meals, one small portion delivered through a slot in the door twice daily. They had been told they were working off debts, paying for transportation and housing costs that multiplied faster than any amount of labor could satisfy. They had been told that resistance meant deportation, arrest, or worse. They had been shown what happened to those who caused problems. The third door held 4 men. Cramped space. No windows. Inadequate ventilation. They ranged in age from early 20s to mid-40s. 2 were from Central America. 1 was from Southeast Asia. 1 was from Eastern Europe. Their stories varied in details but shared a common structure: promises of work, legal documentation that never materialized, debt that expanded beyond any capacity to repay, and confinement as the system transitioned them from voluntary migrants to controlled commodities. They had been there for different durations. The newest arrival had been confined for 2 weeks. The longest-term resident had been in that room for 7 months. He had been moved twice before, different facilities, same conditions, always underground, always locked, always told that freedom was conditional on compliance and that compliance meant silence, obedience, and acceptance that their lives were no longer their own. By the time all 6 rooms were cleared, the count was devastating. 23 people, held in an underground prison beneath a functioning warehouse. Some had been there for over 14 months. Others had arrived within the past week. They were being processed, documented, prepared for transfer to locations across 3 states. Medical conditions varied, but all showed signs of malnutrition, dehydration, and psychological trauma. Several had untreated injuries. One woman had a fractured wrist that had healed improperly because no medical care had been provided. A man in his 30s showed symptoms of pneumonia. His breathing labored. His fever. The tactical team immediately shifted priorities. This wasn't just a raid on a smuggling operation. This was a mass rescue. Medics were called in. Additional support personnel mobilized. The victims needed immediate care, but moving them required coordination. They were documented where they were found, photographed, statements taken, evidence preserved, every detail recorded because this was now a federal case involving multiple jurisdictions, but the clock was ticking. The tactical commander found scheduling documents in the facility's office, printed emails with coded language describing shipments and deliveries. According to recovered notes, a transfer was planned for that evening. Multiple vehicles, multiple destinations. The victims in the underground facility were about to be moved, dispersed across a network of secondary sites where they would vanish completely. The warehouse manager was separated and questioned. Under pressure, he began talking. He didn't know much about the underground facility. That was handled by a separate team that he never interacted with directly. But he knew about the scheduling. He knew about the trucks. He knew that certain containers were marked with specific codes and were never logged into the official system. He knew that those containers generated revenue that never appeared in the company's formal accounting. He gave names, locations. The owner's real business wasn't freight, it was recruitment, transit, and delivery of human cargo. The warehouse was one of 4 facilities operating in the region. Each one had the same setup: legitimate front operation processing real cargo, underground holding area for human trafficking, regular transfers coordinated through encrypted communications. The network had been operational for over 6 years. The tactical commander made the call. They couldn't wait for backup or additional warrants. If the other locations were alerted, the entire network would shut down. Victims would be moved or killed. Evidence would be destroyed. The window was measured in hours, not days. They had one chance to act while the operation was still unaware of the breach. 3 additional SWAT teams were mobilized. Federal agents joined the operation. Simultaneous raids were coordinated across the county. 2 warehouses, an abandoned industrial complex, and a rural property disguised as a shipping storage site. The operations were executed within 40 minutes of each other. Synchronized entries. Overwhelming force. No time for resistance or evidence destruction. The second warehouse yielded 11 more victims, hidden in a basement area beneath what appeared to be a standard storage facility. The third location, an industrial complex that had been purchased 2 years earlier and supposedly converted to manufacturing space, held 17 people in multiple concealed rooms. The rural property, positioned on 20 acres with minimal visibility from public roads, had 8 victims confined in converted shipping containers buried partially underground for temperature control and concealment. In total, across 4 locations, 59 people were recovered. Ages ranged from 15 to 42. Nationalities from 6 different countries. All had been promised work, legal immigration assistance, or safe passage. All had been deceived, confined, and prepared for sale to labor operations, forced prostitution networks, or debt bondage arrangements where escape was impossible, and documentation made victims vulnerable to deportation if they sought help. The owner was located 4 hours later attempting to cross the state line. Arrested without incident. Extradited back and charged with multiple counts of human trafficking, kidnapping, conspiracy, and organized criminal activity. His network had been operating for over 6 years. Financial records indicated hundreds of victims had passed through the system. The victims were offered every available resource: immigration attorneys, medical care, trauma counseling, safe housing while their cases were processed. Some chose to return to their countries of origin. Others applied for asylum or special victim visas. All were given options, information, and time to make decisions without pressure. The warehouse district changed after that. Increased inspections, mandatory audits for logistics companies, coordination between local law enforcement and federal trafficking task forces. The community became vigilant, aware, less willing to ignore unusual patterns. But the raid itself remained a stark reminder of how deeply criminal operations can embed themselves within legitimate structures. The warehouse looked normal. The business appeared legal. The employees seemed ordinary. It took 6 months of surveillance, countless hours of investigation, financial analysis, and one anonymous tip to uncover the truth hiding beneath the surface. And that truth was 40 feet below ground level, behind a false wall and a biometric lock. In 6 small rooms where 23 people had been waiting for rescue, they had almost given up hoping would come. They had listened to the sounds of normal operations happening above them, forklifts moving, trucks loading, workers going about legitimate business while prisoners waited in cells below, their existence unknown to the people working overhead. The tactical commander later described it as one of the most disturbing operations of his career. Not because of violence or resistance, there was minimal confrontation, but because of the scale, the planning, the cold efficiency with which human beings had been reduced to inventory, stored in underground cells and scheduled for distribution like any other commodity. The system was designed to be invisible, relying on the assumption that no one would look beneath the surface of legitimate business operations. The raid had been planned. The entry was coordinated. The breach was executed flawlessly. But none of that preparation could have anticipated what would be found beneath that warehouse floor. None of the intelligence had suggested an underground complex. None of the surveillance had captured the full scope of the operation. The thermal imaging showed heat signatures. The electrical consumption indicated excess power usage. But the reality, 6 rooms, 23 people, a systematic trafficking operation, exceeded the worst predictions. It was only the timing that saved them. Only the fact that the raid happened hours before the scheduled transfer. Only the decision to act immediately rather than wait for additional resources or jurisdictional coordination. If the operation had been delayed even 12 hours, if the transfer had proceeded as planned, those 23 people would have vanished into the network. They would have been dispersed to locations across 3 states. They would have become part of a system designed to erase their identities, their histories, their hope. But the raid didn't wait. The door was breached. The stairs were descended. The rooms were opened. And for 23 people, confinement that ranged from days to 14 months ended in a single morning. The sound of the door opening wasn't punishment. It wasn't another phase of their captivity. It was rescue. It was the moment when the system designed to control them failed. When the network designed to make them disappear was exposed and dismantled. The aftermath was complex. Legal proceedings, victim support coordination, international cooperation to reunite families or establish safe pathways for those who had nowhere to return. The investigation expanded into federal task forces examining similar patterns in other regions. The case became a blueprint for identifying trafficking operations hidden within legitimate infrastructure. But for the tactical team, the memory remained visceral. The sound of bolts sliding back, the sight of faces that had lost hope, the weight of knowing that hours, just hours, separated rescue from catastrophe. They had entered expecting a warrant service, a logistics company suspected of smuggling contraband. They had found a prison, a network, a systematic operation trafficking human beings across state lines with industrial efficiency. They had found evidence of crimes that spanned years, involved dozens of facilitators, and destroyed lives with calculated precision. The raid had been executed. The site was secured. The victims were safe. But the operation's true scope, the underground complex, the multi-state network, the 59 people held across 4 locations, remained a discovery that shocked even the most experienced members of the tactical teams. Officers who had worked trafficking cases before said they had never seen infrastructure this sophisticated, facilities this well concealed, a network this organized. It was a reminder that the worst crimes often hide behind the most ordinary facades, that evil doesn't always announce itself with violence or chaos. Sometimes it operates in silence, beneath the surface, behind locked doors and spaces that shouldn't exist. The warehouse still stands, now under new ownership. The underground facility was sealed and filled with concrete. The community knows its history. But the 23 people who were found in those 6 rooms on that morning in early spring, they carry different memories. Memories of darkness, of waiting, of voices outside the door that might be rescue or might be the next step in their nightmare. For them, the sound of that door opening wasn't just the end of captivity. It was the moment when hope, which had been dimming day by day in those underground cells, suddenly blazed back to life. It was the moment when the system failed to claim them as it had claimed so many others. The raid saved 23 people in that first facility. The expanded operation saved 36 more, 59 lives. 59 people who were hours away from being erased into a network designed to make them disappear. The SWAT teams entered expecting a logistics bust. They found an underground prison. They found victims who had been waiting for rescue while the world above continued unaware of their existence. They found a network that had operated for 6 years beneath the surface of legitimate business. And they found it just in time.